What's going on, YouTube? This is going to be a quick video about my Budweiser refrigerator that I built my own condensing unit for. It originally was a R600A unit, pretty basic beverage cooler. I got it for free because the compressor that was originally in it, the copper broke right here on the inside of it. So that is what was in it. I got the compressor and condenser from a broken ice maker off eBay. I used, let me get some light here, a STC 1000 temperature controller. It also has a Sepco defrost timer on it. The evaporator that's used in it is a Pure Wave evaporator off of AliExpress. I also have a 2-speed fan relay wired in that runs off of 5-volt and 12-volt power supply, so that it will switch between a high and low speed when the compressor is running or not. So here you can see the small evaporator. Like I said, I bought this off of AliExpress. The company is from Pure Wave from China. It's a 120mm fan on there, Roswell, ball bearings. Right now it's in the low speed. That's the temperature probe for the controller. I used 1/4-inch copper with silver solder for all of the piping. I cut a hole into the side of the fridge right there so that the condenser could get some fresh air off the side of the unit. This can actually be put up against the wall all the way. The hot side from here, coming off the compressor, goes into the bottom of the condenser, which heats up the pan for the evaporator drain. So all the condensed water drips down from the evaporator down into this pan, which gets heated up by the hot air blown from the condenser, so it evaporates it. This is the compressor that's on it, same brand that was in it before. So the controller is set up to where it has a 5-minute start delay, so that if the unit had, drinks taken in and out of it too often, that the compressor wouldn't cycle on too early to cause any type of premature failure, overheating of the start windings, or anything like that. It is set right now to -5 is the shut-off point, and 6-degree temperature rise, so it comes back on at 5.5 degrees Celsius. And the reason I have it set up like that is so the coil will slightly defrost every time that it has to recall for cooling, and it goes slightly below freezing, that way that it makes sure the drinks get down the temperature and they will stay at a decent temperature, roughly around 34 to 36 degrees. So the Freon that I used is from Evaporator Coil. They sell this on eBay. Here is a printout of the evaporator coil that I used. It's a Pure Wave mini condenser evaporator. Could be used for either or. It's all copper though. No steel connections in this system. All copper with silver solder. And also the solder that I used was just basic silver solder with a liquid flux. I did not use like a paste flux, and that is just personal preference. So right now I'm going to wait for this unit to call for cooling, and I'll go ahead and hear it run. like I said, right now the fan on the evaporator side is in the low speed, running at 5 volts. And basically the way that this system operates is you have a 12 volt power supply and a 5 volt, a relay with a diode, and you have the evaporator fan and the condenser fan. Or I'm sorry, this is the evap and this is a condenser. So the 5 volts is on all the time. There's always 5 volts running in that in the system. But when the 12 volts calls for cooling, when the temp controller kicks on and turns on the 12 volt power supply, it turns on the relay and kicks on, it basically shuts off the 5 volt feed and allows 12 volts to flow through, and then the diode in the circuit allows, or does not allow, the 12 volts to flow back into the 5 volt power supply because it's on all the time. So when it calls for cooling, relay kicks on, shuts off the 5 volts, turns on the 12. When it's done cooling, when it is satisfied, the 12 volts will drop out, relay will drop out, and the 5 volts will kick back in and keep the evaporator fan running at all the times to keep more consistent temp in the box and to also help defrost the evaporator. The defrost timer is set for 8 hours for 20 minutes, so it defrosts 3 times a day for 20 minutes, and that seems to do just fine. I haven't had any frost issues with it whatsoever. You can see the two, sorry, I'm having to hold the light here and try and film this because it's dark, but this is the 12 volt controller, or I'm sorry, 12 volt DC converter, and the bottom one's 5. So the 5 volts on all the time, and that's the green light that you see on in the back there right now. And there it just called for cooling, and you can see the light turned on the 12 volt supply, relay clicked in. We'll go into the evaporator side. And now this is on full speed 12 volt for full effectiveness for cooling the inside of the cabin. So I've went ahead and made some kind of quick labels for it. You guys can check those out if you want to. It runs 27 grams of R600A. I use 3 ounces of polyester oil, ISO32. I use some pretty basic refrigeration tools. I use the M crate from New Calegon, compressor oil, just some basic copper tubing on there. Nothing fancy. That was actually from a ice maker waterline installation kit for a fridge. I just used that soft copper tubing with the silver solder. Silver solder is really strong. It's good stuff. Has no leaks on the system. I also have a leak detector. Checked it over. It's been running now for a little over a couple months with no issues. I went ahead and painted the access port red to let if anybody else services this thing, they know it's definitely got flammable gas if they can't read that on the compressor. But you can hear it runs pretty quiet. Temperature drops pretty quick. This unit definitely could be a freezer. The evap temperature usually is around negative 11 degrees Celsius on the output, which is right around the correct pressure temperature differential when it runs at about 0 psi. And 0 psi is, I think, like negative 11 degrees for R600A. But yeah, it's kind of just been like a little project of mine. I just have had this cabinet and I thought, man, I'm gonna make this into a high-powered, modern drink cooler so I can load this thing up with drinks whenever I want, and it cools them down pretty fast. Actually, works very well. I'll go ahead and let it come down to temp here, and we'll put the temperature gun on it. I'll show you guys just some temperatures right now as it's running. Typically the compressor, which right now is running at about 100, since this is a low back pressure refrigeration system, it's typical to see a little bit of ice on the return into the suction side of the compressor. These modern compressors actually need that, especially on these kind, because it's running like, you know, 1.8 amps in this little compressor. And you know, you can find like an Embraco, which has even bigger, you know, more cc's inside, bigger piston, more capacity, uses less amperage than these. So it's making a lot of heat inside those coils, even though it's only 140 watts. I mean, we're already down to 2.4. Drops pretty quick, like I said, especially with nothing in the cabinet. It'd probably only run for a couple minutes and be off for about 20-25 minutes. The glass pane in the front definitely doesn't help with the efficiency, but the aesthetics of it, being able to see your drinks and see the inside of it, is pretty nice. And of course you can see the nice red cooling fan for the evaporator in there. I figured that Roswell fan would go good with the cabinet being red. So we're down to about what, 1.2. Let's go ahead and get that thermometer here and see what we're looking like on the inside of this thing. So the evaporator, lowest temp we got to about 7. Drink some here. They're about 30 degrees right now, which is pretty good. 31, 32, no problem. The drain pan, forgot to mention that. The drain pan for the evaporator is made out of an old bottle. I just cut it and made my own drain in there. Trying to get you guys a little better view of how this works. You can see the capillary tube coming up in there. You can see the drain in the back. It works really well. There's nothing to really be afraid of when working with these R600A systems. You just gotta have some good basic common sense, especially with common refrigeration skills as far as flushing things out. You know, just be careful, be aware, understand you're working with the flammable gas, and you'll be alright. Double, triple check your points of where you've soldered or worked on anything. Of course, most of these things I soldered myself. Some of these joints are factory, like the since I use some of these parts out of an already put together system, those are brazed together, and then that's the silver solder where I soldered into the compressor. That's silver soldered. That's, you know, everything on the inside is silver soldered, but there's still some brazed joints. Brazing is very strong. Silver solder is also very strong. It's just a little bit easier, but it's a lower temp situation, so it's, like I said, it's easier, but in the sense of heat goes, if the system got, you know, in a fire, it could blow the line off, but that would be, you know, worst case scenario. So it's not an issue. So we're already back down to 1.6 after opening the cabinet up. We'll go ahead and let it satisfy here. It's a pretty quiet unit. You can see there's some frost starting to develop on that pipe. You can see that temp dropping quick. Once we hit -5, it'll kick off. And you'll see the top power supply for the 12-volt drop out, and you'll hear the relay click last after the temp control satisfies. See that frost go away nice and slow, which you want that frost to not go away too fast because the compressor valves should be sealed, so you'll have a little bit of heat, but you shouldn't have any vapor coming back up into that line. But anyway, so that's how she works. You can see there's some water in there, a little bit. Like I said, I've had it running for a couple months now or so hadn't had any issues. I was thinking I have a terminal on the defrost clock where I could put a heater on the drain pan, and that would get rid of the excess moisture if it ends up building up too much, but I don't think it's going to be an issue. Alright, well, thanks for watching. If you guys got any questions, just let me know, and comment below. Thank you.